This was actually going to be quick, and it was going to be called Facebook and Google are literally the cause of all the world's problems now. But then I did something drastic after the script was written, which I will go into detail in the episode near the end. I've discussed this issue before, and there are videos and podcasts in the bottom bar that you can go to if you want more information on the issue. Robert Evans of Behind the Bastards has recently released a new podcast, two-part episode about Mark Zuckerberg and new reports from a whistleblower who was fired for trying to raise awareness in the company about how absolutely uninterested Mark and the higher-ups at Facebook were about the daily global destruction and threats from outside interference, foreign campaigns, use of sock accounts by political parties to spread misinformation, as well as genocides and ethnic cleansing and rising fascism and COVID misinformation deaths caused daily by their platform with warped misinformation, and there is literally no change happening. It's just getting worse because they only care about money. YouTube and Google did a similar thing back in the early to mid-teens, and while they have rectified some, I'm working my way over to try and find a new platform for my work. It's still not gone nearly enough. Like I said, all the information's in the bottom bar, and if they don't appall you, you have zero ethics. Sadly, all of our connections and the best ways to spread ideas and information are also here, but we need to start considering transitioning and working on ways to change our habits online and learn the other platforms. First, we'll deal with Google. Google Browser puts you directly into a bubble and tracks your data and usage. I've shifted over to DuckDuckGo in Firefox, which I'm not 100% happy about, as searches for what I want isn't as easy or accurate, but it's useful for easy stuff to find. It puts everyone's searches into the same VPN through Google and tracks none of your data and gives the results of the collective data to everyone who uses it, which reduces sensationalism, fake news, and misinformation getting top billing. If anyone knows an even better web search tool, please let me know. Next, for YouTube. There are some others out there, Vimeo, Dailymotion, and others. I'm not impressed because they're either too small a viewer population and require a separate complex upload issue, or they're just going to have the same problems that they get big, creating algorithms that spread misinformation. PeerTube is a decentralized version of YouTube, and if you don't know what that is, link in the bottom bar I made. Right now it's pretty crappy, especially in English-speaking nations, as searching for videos on other nodes is virtually impossible. However, at the end of the year, they're launching PeerTube 3.0, which should fix all of these issues, making it no longer insulated. PixelFed, the Instagram decentralized alternative, has the same issue, which is why it's nowhere near ready for prime time yet. Also, with PeerTube, you can just post a link of your YouTube video and it will seamlessly publish to PeerTube. Next, on to Facebook. After trying several different combos, using a hybrid of Twitter and Friendica are the best options in my opinion. You can cross-post between the two and you can completely ignore one forever and just use the other, and they will still keep working. Of the three giants, Facebook, Google, and Twitter, Twitter has been the most ethical, which is a ridiculously low bar, and it's still a pretty big platform to spread ideas. You can also copy-paste images and post articles easily via Twitter, even if you mostly just use Friendica for everything else, like I'm doing. I have a 4-part series on how to use Friendica, as it's so robust because it's Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace combined, so there are a ton of options. There is one thing I said wrong in part 4, that is, while you can download and back up all your old posts, you can't re-upload them yet to a new instance if you migrate. However, if you have Twitter mirroring everything, it won't matter as much because you can still have a copy of every post. Also, Jack Dorsey is considering decentralizing Twitter in the future, so at some point, Friendica's style of social media may become the norm. Having Twitter mirroring with your Friendica is great because if your node somehow dies for many various reasons, none of the actual data is lost and it's still all on Twitter. And putting my money where my mouth is, I took the plunge this weekend, and I began unliking Facebook. This was a several-day process that took so much mental energy. I started off on Facebook in February of 2005, just 1 year after the Facebook launched. To be honest, I joined it trying to meet women, as I used it like a dating site, like I did MySpace and other social platform sites. I've been there ever since. Every time they asked me to add new information, I happily obliged in that MySpace spirit of profile personalization. So there is 16 and a half years of data and likes there that I had to move or purge, and so Friday I started doing just that. I began unliking and unfollowing public figures and organizations I didn't already have established communications via Facebook right after I started following them on Twitter. If they didn't have a Twitter presence, I looked for them on Instagram, which, yes, is still evil, but I'm just there for cat pictures as it is and can get through my daily feed in maybe less than a minute. Then I went into the likes and began unliking things and organizations, and if I still like them, I would follow them on Twitter too. Movies unliked, books unliked, TV programs unliked, hobbies unliked. As I progressed, I noticed my feed began to change massively. Because I was giving them a lot less data, they upped the ads massively. Also, the ads got more and more generic and lowest common denominator. My partner has always hated Facebook for a decade and was a very early Twitter adopter. I never could understand why. My partner has always had this experience as she refused to give them personalized data for ads, so the ads have always been this trashy and annoying, so she doesn't have the warm memories I have because they were all tailor-made for me. Now it's like seeing a gutted luxury apartment building that looked comfy before, and then you go back in and it's stripped to the studs and just looks ugly and uninviting. My God, purging and moving 16 years of Facebook takes literally hours. It feels never ending. I've also discovered tons of things I didn't realize were actively being posted by friends and organizations, but Facebook decided it wasn't financially beneficial for them to show me. It's also amazing just how much less sensational my feed in Friendica and Twitter are than Facebook. Facebook really knew how to boost the addictive emotions way more than I knew. It's like all these things you know via data, but you don't really know until you do something this drastic. Transitioning had the same amount of mental effort and overwhelming strain as moving. It just took roughly 24 hours of work as opposed to like 3 days. I highly recommend that if you try this, to just pick a few people you follow daily and switch them over instead of what I did, especially if you have as much data as they have to unlike. I'm still having issues adjusting to the Twitter feed and realized there were some advantages to Facebook in that they curated the content based on my reactions to boost my brain drugs. I tried to get through my entire Twitter feed via Friendica the first morning and probably didn't even get close to half the stuff posted since the night before. That's why I was never into Twitter. I did discover there is an option to turn off infinite scrolling, which lets me stop when I reach the end of the page of 40 posts or whatever number of posts I want, so I can keep track of how long I've been scrolling. Also gives me that sense of completion I had when I was on Facebook. It will actually be no different from Facebook, as they filter based on money, as opposed to Twitter users who filter by time they checked on it. There's also the issue of duplicate posts that Facebook's good at consolidating and then just letting you know everyone who shared it, not so much with Twitter, which would also be nice. All these problems are doable though. My feed is much more intellectual and requires active thought, and I know I'm not helping in genocide and fascism by giving to Zuck all of my information and helping him make more money. I do have to say that feeding Twitter through Friendica makes keeping track of comments so much easier. I never found the Twitter comments section to make sense, and it wasn't intuitive to me, but through Friendica, it makes the Twitter comments set up more like Facebook comments, and they're way more intuitive to longtime Facebook users. The comments and likes mirror back to Twitter, but there is a bit of a delay. Also, unlike Twitter, Friendica doesn't discriminate by post length. It will just repost on Twitter as a truncated version of your post to fit the character limit and a link to read more, which fits my verbose lifestyle much more. Also, because of this, unlike with Twitter, you can edit your longer posts, and it will reflect on Twitter. There is a complication with nested retweets, which require clicking on the name of the poster and going directly to the Twitter account to retweet. However, I've reported it, and the very helpful developers are on it, and it will probably be fixed in the December upgrade. So other than that, and cut and pasting pictures and finding new people to follow, there's no reason to be on Twitter other than to check numbers of likes, as comment notifications are sent directly to Friendica via the bell icon. So other than that, I don't even have to see any Twitter ads in the process, giving them less money. Mind you, all of my data is essentially worth like $12 according to Adam Ruins Everything, but hey, that's $12 he doesn't have every year. Overall, it's a fascinating experience and will take a bit of adjustment to new subtle differences, but the more people who switch over to Friendica, the less I'll be on Facebook. In fact, I'm no longer adding a single person to my Facebook unless I've met you in person. I have around 20 people who know me from YouTube waiting to be added. Sorry, it's not gonna happen. So I'm offering everyone here on my channel to set them up with a Friendica/Twitter account. It may take me a bit if I get a flood of orders, but if you wish, send me both a PM containing your preferred handle and an email address to link it to, which will be shared with no one, and a comment below to let me know you sent me a PM, as YouTube is bad at notifying me about PMs. I will also include how to cross-link your Friendica and Twitter accounts. I would do that for you, but it requires a Twitter password. If you don't have or want a Twitter account, I'll then set you up with a Mastodon account, which is the decentralized Twitter and fills in all the gaps Friendica currently has. Over time, that should get filled in, but the developers are working their asses off as it is. I'll pick the instance that is best based on stats alone. Also, send your country so I can pick an instance in your country. If you don't feel comfortable giving out your email address to me, just tell me your country in the comments and I'll send you a link to the best instance at the time so you can sign up, as every instance has a limit based on memory and internet speed and often closes their admissions after a certain number of members join. The instance I'm on is currently one of the top 3 most stable instances in the US at social.isurf.ca, but by the time one of you in the future sees this, it could well be closed to new members, and I'll pick a different one for you based on your country. If you want to be friends on social media, Twitter is obvious, but you'll get much more direct and personal access via Friendica. If more people move, we can all eventually abandon Facebook, which we are so bound to these days because everyone we know is on there. I'll probably do another of these videos in the near future next time we get a leak about how awful Zuck and the internet giants are. If you want Friendica to get better or to help out your local instance provider, please chuck a couple of bucks their way. Everything in the world is going to just keep getting worse unless we can all wean ourselves off of the blood-sucking parasite we're all addicted to and keep feeding Zuck money. Make the first step to switch even if you don't use it, so that as you know more and more people there, you can slowly spend less time on Facebook giving him less money to kill people and destroy democracy. So thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. I'm sure there was nothing controversial about this and everyone will happily get along in the comments section, which you can do on the YouTube version of this video or my Facebook page, After School Democracy. Link in the show notes. Just a reminder that I'm Anubis2814 on YouTube, and I have over 500 videos on different topics that I've made over the past 10 years. Please subscribe, and if your podcast site has the option, give me a like or review. If you think what I have to say informed you, consider supporting my Patreon. I'll be doing this podcast weekly and try to get it out on the same day, so I hope to see you here next week, ready to be filled with new ideas. Take care. This channel is helped tremendously by the generous supporters on Patreon. A big thank you to the wonderful Joe Taylor, Elias Garcia Guevara, and Ogrel for their support at the $10 a month Wapawet level. Please consider donating to my work if you can, and thank you all for listening.